Death and money are two things that can absolutely rip a family apart.
My grandma passed away. She had been estranged from my parents and siblings and all other family members for over 15 years. During those 15 years, I had a close relationship with her. She made me her enduring power of attorney, which basically means her decision maker. Also, the director of her will. My parents and siblings have had hate and bitterness towards her and completely wiped her. But I never experienced anything that they did, so my relationship with my grandma was never affected. Now, my grandma has left me with everything, including money. Do I respect her wishes and not give any of the family money or belongings? Or do I divide it because they now want it and said that they deserve it?
Death and money are two things that can absolutely rip a family apart. And I think there is no one listening to this. Maybe you will be the chosen child, but very few people listening to this will not have a story from their family tree where money and inheritance ruined a relationship somewhere in their family tree. I think it is pretty relevant and it is pretty prolific. I think that this is such a hard one to answer. And the reason for that is because my initial response is no, they had no relationship with your grandmother for 15 years. You had obviously an incredibly close relationship. They don't deserve anything. That's a really simple way of answering this question. I think a more complex way of answering this question is to ask, what is their grievance with your grandmother? And the reason why I say that is because you, for example, may be the youngest grandchild. You may not have experienced the abuse, the treatment, the mistreatment that they experienced, and therefore relationship with your grandma may be very, very different. There may be some animosity that you, even though you know what their grievances are, that you maintained a relationship with her when everyone else had to cut her off, basically. And so I would question whether keeping all of this inheritance is worth damaging your relationship with your existing family who you also love and want to be in contact with. And I say this because I have a little bit of skin in the game with this, not when it comes to inheritance by any means, but from having a different relationship with someone. My example is, so my stepdad, my first stepdad, who is my brother's dad, not Neil, who I've talked about also, confusing for everyone, but my first stepdad, he was very, very abusive. And he was a heroin addict. He was in our life for 9 years. And the best thing that came out of that 9 years was the fact that I had my little brother, Matt, who is quite a bit younger than me. But when my brother was born, that's when his father left. So my brother growing up never had a relationship with his dad. And it wasn't until Matt's my brother's name, until he was more of an adult that he became aware of all the stories around what Alex did and the reason why he wasn't a part of the family. And so it was really challenging for me when Matt, as an adult, wanted to have some relationship with him because I felt this level of betrayal. I was like, well, you know all of these things. You know how he treated me. You know how he treated your sister. You know how he treated mum. Why would you want to know this man? And I understand that like relationships are complex and there's many reasons why people want the things that they want from sense of identity and everything else. So I question, did your family have a very unique relationship with your grandma? Was there a reason why they cut her off? And so is this inheritance money just feeling like this really dirty wedge in your relationship? That would be my big question. And without those answers, it's really, really hard to answer this. But what I would think is that if you do choose to keep all of this money and all of this inheritance, and there is a really great reason as to why they had to cut her out of their relationship in the first place, you will damage your relationship with your now existing family and what's more important to you.
It's so hard that you've been put in this situation.
It's fucking terrible.
It's so hard because nothing affects your grandma now, right? She's dead. So she's done it. You're going to
Totally.
You're the one that has to deal with the ramifications. Do I think that your grandma is going to know what you do? Personally, I don't believe that. I don't believe that she's up there watching your decisions. So whatever you do, I don't think it doesn't need to be laden with guilt. There has to have been something that went down off the back of what you're saying, Laura, because otherwise an entire family doesn't turn their back on someone. But you don't know which way it went. You don't know if the grandma has done something that's upsetting to the family or if the family have done something upsetting that the grandma's wanted to pull away. You don't know which way it is. I think I'd be getting to the bottom of that. But at the end of the day, this decision won't affect your grandma, but it will affect you for the rest of your life, like your connection with every one of your family members. Do I think it's worth the repercussions if you keep it all? I'm just trying to think of my family. No, I don't think it is
Yeah.
because like you only get, well, not everyone. I was going to say you only get one family, but that's not true. You can have multiple families. Laura is a prime example. But like that's your family, right? So if something happens now, and money is so divisive, if you keep every part of that, your family seems like are going to hold a really big grudge. I don't know if you can divide it in a way where maybe you keep one asset to yourself, whether that is like some sort of property or whatever she's left. Maybe you can keep one aspect and then you divide all the rest, or you divide the cash, or I don't know if there's a way you can work around that. Maybe that's like the happy medium. Like you're like, look, grandma was adamant, but I'm still going to give it to you anyway. Like grandma was adamant. She was like, do not let my family touch my money.
Yeah.
But I'd be getting to the bottom of it. I don't think it's worth keeping the whole thing. You might have money, but you will be unhappy with the fact that you've lost that relationship with your family.
Oh, I honestly, there is no way of navigating this that is easy. Money, inheritance, family are so challenging. And that is why you have to have these conversations with people when they're alive. Like it is a horrible place that you have been put in, that you are responsible to pass down your grandma's wishes with the rest of your family because nobody had this conversation when she was still alive. Like that is a hideous place to be in. I agree with you, Britt, completely. For me, I do not prioritize, and this comes from a place of privilege, obviously. Like I have made my own money in life that I do not need to rely on an inheritance. Not everybody is able to do that, for many, many reasons. So I would not prioritize an inheritance over my relationship with my family, but I understand why some people feel as though they have to.
And for some people, it's life-changing.
Exactly. It's a very, very different situation. Is there a situation where you could go, okay, I'm going to keep 50% and then divide up 50%, exactly like you said, Britt? But I do think there is going to be a decision that needs to be made, and that decision is literally your relationships or money. And that is how they're going to view it as well. And it's awful that they also are viewing it things like this, like that they feel this sense of entitlement to something. Because I do think regardless of the relationship, right? Like regardless of how broken down it was, regardless of who did what, if you have not been a part of someone's life for 15 years, you do not have the right to ask for anything. And even if that's because that person has done wrong by you and there is hatred there, like I never would want a single dollar from my stepdad when he died. I don't want anything from him. Do you know what I mean? So there's no sense of entitlement to it. And I guess that's where this is so challenging for you to reconcile, because you're like, well, they made the decision, regardless of the situation, they made the decision to leave. And I stayed and dedicated my life to my grandma. Did you do that because you wanted this inheritance, or is the inheritance just a byproduct of it? I don't know. There's so many ways that you can split this, but I think you've got to make decisions for yourself and also for your long term and what's going to be the best thing for you in terms of financially, but also in terms of how you're going to maintain relationships with your family.
Also, wills don't really mean anything. The family can just go and challenge that anyway and say, look, we're the family. I'm actually the daughter. I am the son. She wasn't in her right state of mind when she did the will. There are so many ways to challenge a will, and you definitely don't want to have to go down that track as well. Sounds like your family probably would go down that track because they want to. So I think this one, you might have to say, sorry, Nan, and then do what's best for you now.
Oh, God. I reckon we will get so many messages from people who have had tricky inheritance situations with their families, because it is so fucking common, as we said.